mixed in with the X's and O's and the oohs and ahs.
Are you kidding me?
It's the fantasy.
You can't steer away from Hopkins, but you can certainly take Adams over.
And the reality. It's the access.
People are going to count us out every week.
And the attitude.
Say it to management or shut your mouth and put your money on the line.
It's the trash talk.
Brother, do it quick.
And the crazy talk.
More bricks out of pile. Let's go.
It's all here, all day, every day. Because there's no such thing as too much football.
It's day one of the Ron Rivera era in Washington. The Redskins' new head coach introduced today by the team with Adrian Peterson and Jonathan Allen sitting in the front row listening to him, and Tiffany Blackman there also to catch up with him afterward.
Coach, you told me it feels good to be called coach again. You weren't out of it for that long, but how special is today?
It was very special. It really was, because one of the things that we talked about, after I did my press conference, we sat down and talked, and we talked about fit. I told you I was looking for fit, what I thought would be a really good fit going forward. And as I went through this process with Mr. Snyder and had an opportunity to visit and talk about what his vision was, the plan that he wanted to implement and the process it was going to take, I really started to see the fit. And as I studied this roster of young football players, veteran football players, I liked what I saw.
You said that Dwayne Haskins can become a franchise quarterback. You know a thing or two about that, having worked with Cam Newton, especially being a part of drafting Cam Newton during your first year in Carolina. How will you go about helping Dwayne to elevate his game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is he's going to have to understand what it takes first and foremost. He's got a tremendous skill set. He's a smart football player. He does some really good things. I had an opportunity to really go back and study the games that he played in when the game plans were set for him. And there were some impressive things he did. And I talk about the Detroit game where in the last quarter, the fourth quarter, he had those two drives that led to scores, and how cool and calm and collective he was, the decisions he made, the balls he delivered, putting them where they needed to be thrown. He just did some really quality things. So I think as a young player, he's got some growth. But I don't want to discard the veteran guys we have. We got some guys that really, I believe, can help contribute to this football team, and we'll find out. I mean, just an opportunity to have competition, I think, will help him to grow as well.
He was very popular with his players in Carolina, as we saw the day that he was fired, and everyone talked about the ways in which he impacted them as fathers and just people away from the field. Gerald McCoy said that the Redskins players, this was the best thing that was ever going to happen to them in their career, which is very high praise. Willie McGinest, Joe Thomas, what do you think of this move? Do you think this is the right person to turn things around in Washington?
Yeah, you heard it right there in that press conference. You said, hey, that we're going to have expectations and things are going to be done a certain way around here, or you're not going to be here. And that's the type of mentality you have to have if you want to change the culture of an entire organization. You want to build a foundation, a winning culture right there. You need somebody who's unwavering in their beliefs and who's going to ask everybody, you're jumping on board with me or you're going somewhere else.
And you talk about a man that's going to come in there and earn the respect as soon as he walks through the front door, just because of who he is and what he stands for. But you talk about affecting and changing people's mindset, team over individualism, everybody buying in. He talked about competition at every single position, even at the quarterback position, whether it really is or not. You have to be able to understand. You have to feel like that throughout the locker room. And you mentioned culture and all those things. What is culture? What is it? It's getting a bunch of men with big egos, alpha males, or whatever you want to call it, to buy into something, not for them, but for the team, and moving forward and understanding this is the way we have to do things. Now, he's going to have that respect initially. You got to go out. You got to win. You got to bring in vets. You got to draft well. You got to have a core group of men in the locker room that's going to kind of push what you're saying and be team leaders and all those different things. But I think this is the perfect guy for this job. I think he really understands what he needs to go in and do. He dealt with those personalities in Carolina for so many years. He's been able to weather storms and teach football and be successful.
What's his first item of business here?
Well, the first thing I think he needs to do is sit down with Trent Williams, his left tackle who didn't play last year, and convince him that, first of all, you want to stay and be a Washington Redskin, and you want to play for me. Because I'm the type of guy that can turn this thing around, and you want to be part of this turnaround when I'm here. And I think a big move was getting rid of Bruce Allen. They got rid of their trainers, which were a couple of the issues that Trent Williams had when he was dealing with that medical issue last year. But now it's up to Ron Rivera to be the persuasive guy that he is, to sit down with Trent Williams and say, look, I know you had a problem with Dan Snyder and how he handled your injury, but you know what? it's going to be all right. I'm in charge now. Things are going to happen a lot differently than they have in the past. You can believe in me. And I got to play for Ron Rivera in the high-stakes Pro Bowl, let me tell you. But even in that setting, just sitting down and talking with him, you realize how much respect he commands right away in that locker room. He's a former player. He's sat in your seat. He's walked in your shoes. And he can be very persuasive to the best players in the NFL.
And it's interesting that you talk about discipline and sending a message to the team. It's, this is the way we're going to do things, but then also on the back end to hear so many players who loved him anyway.
Well, that's
so
all
he
a player
does it
wants.
in a way.
Yeah, the player wants discipline. They want structure. They want somebody who's going to come in there and make the team more important than the me. And that's who Ron Rivera is. And at the beginning, he might rub some people the wrong way, but that's okay. That's part of building that winning culture that Willie was talking about.
He'll also put his arm around you.
Yeah.
And be there for other things outside of football, because he's going to talk about the game and everything else, but also life and being a man and doing what's right and what's wrong. And I think that's important, too, for this generation.
Gain respect.
And going into that locker room.
Well, it will be important for Dwayne Haskins' development. Yes. He was the Week 15 Pepsi Rookie of the Week, an award that went to a different quarterback in Week 17. It is Gardner Minshew from the Jags, whose 3-touchdown, 295-yard performance in a win over the Colts helped him snag 40% of the vote this week, beating out Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown, who came in second and third, respectively. It's Minshew's 7th Rookie of the Week award this year. Not sure what that means for his status as the starting quarterback next season, though, and he's not the only one in the AFC South whose future is up in the air. Colts quarterback Jacoby Brissett didn't play so hot down the stretch, and it sounds like Chris Ballard isn't sure he's their guy.
The jury's still out. That's why we did the short-term deal with Jacoby, both from a standpoint of, one, to give us some security that we knew we had a player we liked and could go forward with, but also, two, to see where we're going to, time for us to figure out if he is the guy. I'll say this, right now, yes, Jacoby is our starting quarterback.
Right now, yes, but the jury's still out. David, I'm going to put you on that jury. What is your verdict? Should they stick with Jacoby?
Well, I think Chris was brutally honest. He just told it exactly like it is. And I think it's exactly like you see when you watch Jacoby play. I actually like Jacoby Brissett a lot. I think that he has probably more ability than people give him credit for, because for so long you watched Andrew Luck play, and he has an elite level ability. But Jacoby has a big arm. He's accurate. He knows what to do. I think he's a good leader. I hear him say all the right things in the press conferences and watch him on the sideline, and his demeanor there looks great. The only thing that bothers me is occasionally, just for an example, I was watching the Oakland Raiders play them earlier this year, and they're right there. They're kind of moving the ball up and down the field, and I'm thinking, man, it's going to be a tough out. And then he throws just a blatant late pick six to Eric Harris right here. He stares down at his receiver. It's a pretty simple read, pretty simple throw. You make it when you're literally in high school, and then he makes that turnover, and that pretty much sealed the game for the Raiders, and they were able to steal that game up there in Indy. And I kind of said, well, okay, let's watch this thing progress. And as you watch him throughout the rest of the year, he did more things like that. He'll be having great games. And then a play like this where, okay, dump it down. If it's not there, you can take the sack, throw it away. But then he'll try to kind of force the issue and almost do too much, ends up throwing an interception right here. And this happened a lot. And unfortunately, when you're looking at a guy that's going to be a franchise guy, and you saw, again, Andrew Luck, bless you, or Peyton Manning, those plays you can't make if you're fighting for a division title at the end of the season, or if you're in a situation where you're in a playoff hunt. And that's what Chris Ballard's looking for. He's not looking for a guy to go win him 8-8, go throw for 5,000 yards, maybe have a couple 20, 30 turnovers. He doesn't want that guy. He wants a guy that's going to win him a Super Bowl championship, and that's what he's evaluating Jacoby on. It's not that he's not a good player yet. He just has to develop, and he's still young. I mean, he still hasn't played a lot of football, so give him time, because 95% of what Jacoby does, I really like. It's just those little errors that he's got to kind of clean up.
Well, and one of the questions, as you guys mentioned, talking about Tom Brady, when you're talking about replacing a quarterback, is who are you going to replace him with?
Absolutely right.
They don't pick until 13th in the draft. I don't know if there's someone else that's available that's better. We will see. Still ahead on this show, your preparation for Wild Card Weekend is not complete. Not until you realize that the first game, maybe the best game. It's the Bills and the Texans, and to get you ready, we're bringing in a ringer. Bills safety Micah Hyde is coming up next.
NFL Game Day morning.